I welcome our eminent speaker, Mr. Jawar Sircar, and moderator, our past president of Ladies Study Group, Mukul Agarwal. I welcome governing body members, past presidents, and dear Ladies Study Group members. Welcome eminent dignitaries in the audience and members of Calcutta Heritage Collective and guests. Today's discussion on the unique story of emergence of Indian civilization to be deliberated by erudite scholar Jawar Sircar, which will leave you spellbound and make you feel a proud Indian. Mukul Agarwal, an architect, founder trustee of Calcutta Heritage Collective, is in conversation with Jawar Sircar. Mukul, please introduce Mr. Jawar Sircar and carry forward the conversation. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much, Amitadi, for giving me this exciting opportunity. I am truly overwhelmed, and you'll soon know why. Though Shri Jawar Sircar really needs no introduction, for the few who are perhaps unaware, here is an overview. Jawar is a distinguished member of Parliament of the Rajya Sabha and deservedly prominent as a public intellectual who takes a bold stand through his writings and speeches. He studied at the universities of Calcutta, Cambridge, Sussex, and Presidency, and has 2 master's degrees in ancient Indian history and culture, and in sociology and social anthropology. Jawar served the IAS for over 4 decades, last as the CEO in charge of Doordarshan and All India Radio. He was also the longest-serving culture secretary to the Government of India, reporting directly to the Prime Minister. Dr. Manmohan Singh publicly described him as one of India's most distinguished and knowledgeable civil servants. The British Museum conferred a medal on him for his outstanding contribution to cultural cooperation between India and the UK. He has represented India at the UNESCO, UNIDO, and World Heritage Committee several times. Shri Sircar has served as chairman of the board of the very prestigious the Center for Studies in Social Sciences, Kolkata. His main love is his research in social and religious history. Historian Tapan Rai Chaudhary of Oxford officially commended him for his exceptional analytical power and depth of knowledge in diverse fields. Thank you, Jawar, for accepting our invitation for today. And now, on behalf of the LSG, I would also like to welcome Jawar's wife, Srimati Nondita Sircar. Nondita Di, we are indeed honored to have you amongst us today. And from here, we go straight to Jawar. Do enlighten us on the subject for this evening, the unique story of the emergence of the Indian civilization. Maybe we can take the cue from what the famous journalist and British politician, Mr. John Strachey, once said: "There is not and never was an Indian. No Indian nation, no people of India."
Thank you. Let me start by thanking the LSG for inviting me. And I feel not only overwhelmed, but a bit nervous. Part of it is because my wife is around. And as you know, spouses, I can't imagine life without her. It's so difficult, but with her is also difficult.
And
okay.
He has told me this earlier, so he's not just making it up.
Oh, no. So, having said that, I'll come straight to the point. This is, don't get overwhelmed by a subject like Indian civilization and all that. It's all a fancy way of putting things. This is something that you see all around you, and today I'll try to help you ask the right questions. Ask questions more and more as we go along. You see, have you ever wondered how we treat India? One Mrs. Venkatraman sitting next to an Ahuja, sitting next to a call, and then you have somebody from Northeast, and none of us feel odd about it. Have you noticed? We don't feel odd about it because there's something unifying among all of us. See the craziness with which we watch matches, wave, shout. There's no feeling of difference, but if you look at it intensely, you'll find the difference between two groups in India is more than more than the difference between, let us say, a Scotsman and a Polish. At least a Scotsman and a Polish have something in common, but what would, let us say, somebody who has never traveled beyond Kerala would have common between somebody in Arunachal? But that really has not precluded us from becoming one nation. As Mukul read out, the British have always insisted on two things, that India is just a geographical expression. It's never a nation, it never was a nation. There's a quote by Strachey, one of the imperial scholars, who said, there is not and never was an Indian nation. Pronouncement. They cursed us before leaving, and the second thing that they insisted was that we got you guys together. We got you guys together. Had it not been for us, you would have been remaining quarreling ethnicities. Well, they have a pinch of truth, but loads of lies. I'll explain to you as we move along. First of all, we must, once we accept the fact that we are here together and we don't feel odd about it, widely different languages, we have our own systems of reaching our equilibrium. We can talk in a common language and go back and have our food. Talk to our aunts or grandmothers in our language and talk to others in the language they'll understand, and keep switching gears as we talk. And that is. Now, first of all, the first misinformation that we need to dispose of is that this was acquired by conquest. Unities are usually a byproduct of conquest, no doubt about it. But in the case of India, the country as we know, or the country that we knew in 1947, was never, I insist, never held together in its whole, not even during the British period. They had 14 pink provinces, British provinces, and 565 kingdoms. Many of you know of Jodhpur, Jaipur, Bhopal, vagara, vagara. You know all of these. So these were different kingdoms. You needed a passport, you needed a visa, you needed a separate currencies there. They are within what we call the subcontinent of India, but they were technically all separate. They had their own sipahis, they had their own cannons, they had their own everything. So 565 princely states or kingdoms and 14 different provinces was what the British gifted us and said tata goodbye, leaving us at that point. But before that, the first essential lessons we are taught in history is that India has been united by great emperors like Chandragupta Maurya, the Mauryas, the Guptas, the Mughals. These are the three major dynasties. Just to get you off the wrong impression, the Mauryas never ruled more than 2/3 of India. And it's a very loose form of rule. At the highest also, Karnataka, Andhra, Tamil Nadu, it's all outside their land. But they went all the way up to Afghanistan and beyond. That's a different issue. Move on, a few hundred years later, the Guptas, the imperial Guptas. The imperial Guptas never even crossed the Narmada. When they talk of the art of imperial Guptas, look at the art of Ajanta. Ajanta was outside the area. It's like us claiming Bangladesh is ours. I mean, it's sort of, you're not there in the border. But they had a profound influence. I'm not demeaning them. I'm just telling you that territorially they were not in command of even more than 55% of India. That's all. They had a glorious period. 55% is all they controlled. Move on to the Mughals. Forget the first two. Come to number 3, 4, and 5, and 6. 6 is a bit of a problem. But at 6 was the highest. And that was around 75% of troubled India. Theoretically, they held India together. Aurangzeb held India, theoretically about 75%. The point is, it was never, 100% of it was never got together. So the Nayars and the Pillays were always out. But they are very much a part of one integral civilization. So was there another level beyond conquest that got us together? Obviously, the answer lies that it was not in conquest. There was various aggregators playing along. It's time we recognized Indian history for its real worth, not for what the textbooks tell us. What were these aggregators? I would personally give credit to two groups. Please don't misunderstand me. I'm not referring to castes. I'm referring to socioeconomic groups. One group was what I would call the bearers of Brahmanical culture, largely Brahmins. Whether we like them or don't dislike them, whether we feel they had imposed wrong systems, is beyond the point. Factually, they were carrying together a particular message, a narrative that ultimately got India together. I'll come to the point, how it all happened. And the second was very interesting. You have a map of India, yeah? This is very interesting. I was wondering what this stick is for. It was placed next to Mukul, and I thought that this was something that the lady study group does on. I wasn't very sure, but anyway. So I didn't know, so it looked very threatening. Now I remember. It's a pointer. Nandita, take note. Now, the second group were traders, entrepreneurs, and that's one role we don't give them their dues. Let me explain how they operated. I'll just give you one or two examples, and you'll see how this group had crisscrossed India, because there were only two groups that crisscrossed India, and everybody else was in their little puddles. They were in their little village, province, kingdom, whatever you had, and most of them had never crossed the boundaries of their village. And yet, they were all subject to a pan-Indian narrative that was brought in, preached, propagated, call it whatever. I'll give you an example how these things, when bullock carts were the only means of communication, see the enterprise of the Indian trading groups. A ship would come in from, does it work? Would come in from, say, China and come up somewhere in Rupnarayan. Ganga was then silted, so it comes along Rupnarayan. Rupnarayan is, I don't know whether you know, near Haldia. Anyway, it comes along and meets the Bhagirathi, and then it goes up the Bhagirathi to a point. There was no Farakka barrage, so you could sail through, and goes along the Ganga around this way. And finally, the Ganga has three left-hand turns, three major left-hand turns. It takes a third left-hand turn, a river called Chambal Daku, remember? Phulan Devi, that Chambal. And then it turns around from Chambal this way, and it comes along, and then the Chambal becomes unnavigable. So our merchants know exactly what to do. They transfer their goods to a tributary of the Chambal called Shipra, a holy river. Now you'll understand why it's holy. So Shipra, and from Shipra, at the end of Shipra, you get a town called Ujjain. Now, you'll understand how commerce and piety were all mixed up together. Because these were important trading ports, there was chanda given. lots of chanda given, lots of wealth flowing. So Ujjain becomes a very important trading center, come a pilgrimage. And all you did was offload it at Ujjain, and next morning go by bullock carts to reach the Narbada at a point called Mahesh. Mahesh Saris, I think, na? Maheshwar. Maheshwari. So Maheshwar, or Mahesh as it's called, you reach there in exactly 2 days. And once you are Mahesh, you are on Narbada. And on Narbada, you come out into the into the Arabian Sea, and tata goodbye. So you have served. Have I been able to explain one route more or less? So there were hundreds of routes like this, and to explain how these things happened and why I picked on 2 groups, you have to understand that when you think of Chanakya, Chanakya was supposedly born. We haven't figured out, he didn't carry his Aadhaar certificate. Now, we didn't have them at that time. So Chanakya was born somewhere near Kanchipuram, deep down in south, and went up this way, holding on to river valleys one after the other, till he reached Peshawar. From here, this is where he was taught, where he studied, and where he taught students. And from there, he goes down in search of work to Patliputra, Patna. Can you see the crisscrossing of India? Crisscrossing at a time when there were hardly any means of transport. It was that compulsion that got India together. You know Shankaracharya? You know where he was born? So most of you know, but just for the heck of it, I'll explain. He is born here, goes and sets up a mutt here in the Himalayas. The second mutt he sets up at Dwarka. The third mutt he sets up at Jagannath. And the fourth mutt at Rameswaram here. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, the diamond of India being crisscrossed by a diamond-like structure at 4 corners. India was never ruled from the center. That's the essence of Indian wisdom. Never. One nutcase tried it. His name was Muhammad bin Tughlaq, saying, I got to rule from the center. Phew, would not like to think much about it. Now, these are the same places that the British chose in all their advanced wisdom for 4 capitals also. Calcutta, Bombay, Delhi, and Madras. Think. I mean, there's no connection between the two, but that's how you operate. Okay, so move on. These 2 classes that I mentioned were the trading groups and this thing. They have actually contributed a lot to getting India together. They were what I call the aggregators. The ruling groups were, of course, there, the Kshatriyas, the Rajputs, whatever you call them, but they were highly localized. It's only after the trains came in that they sort of got crisscrossed each other and got intermarried with different places. Now, to understand this story of India, we must understand space or geography, and we must understand time. To space, the spatial part is, as I said, the holy rivers. First of all major rivers are converted into holy. And they are holy because, I mean, don't mess around with it, because they are our national highways. They were the national highways. So every river, Nashik, it's what the hell is Nashik to do? It's not in the Ganga. Hang on. Nashik is very close to the Arabian Sea, near Bharuch. You could bring things to Nashik in 1 day from the Arabian Sea. And Nashik is on a river which connects to Bhima. Okay? Bhima is a tributary of Godavari. And Godavari means you can come out here. This is Nashik. There's a river going. This is the Godavari. And you come out here to Machilipatnam. So everything, once you start looking at it, everything has got something to do with some source of economic wealth. And this economic transfers of power, transfers of goods and services actually got my country together. And the philosophy that held it together, I'm not coming into the good part or the bad part of it. That we'll discuss some other day. This is what I'm saying is just a saransh, just the little bit, the what actually happened. So first of all, you have the rivers all being taken into account. And lest you forget, every prayer begins with Ganga, Saraswati, Yamuna, Ganga, Yamuna, Saraswati, Sindhu, Kaveri, Krishna, isn't it? So this is to get the idea clear to everyone in every place. Somebody who's not seen any of these rivers, somebody in Tripura, who's not seen any of the rivers, knows these rivers by heart from day one. So that's the operational style of how you take it. Similar mountains. I get amazed at a time when people walk by foot. How on earth did you discover Kailash? And Kailash is not only a source of beauty and inspiration, it's a place from where you get three important rivers coming out. The three important rivers, I thought somebody was raising slogans. Now, band karo. So, Kailash is a place from where you get three important rivers coming out, the Indus, the Ganga system, and the Brahmaputra systems. So this extent of geography comes from people who are adventurous and enterprising. So you have all the mountains, the Vindhyas, as sacred. So we have declared all the highways to be sacred. You have declared all the impediments to be sacred. All the mountains and barriers to be sacred. And as you move along, the most enterprising, most interesting way of getting all of India together were the two epics. I'm not getting into the details of the epics, good, bad, whether somebody was born here or somebody was not. That's not my business. That's for others, genealogists, to find out, people. What I am interested is the mechanism in which it operated. Both the epics had two convenient periods when you are off the map, no more GPS functioning. Okay? 14 years Vanvas, and 13 years Vanvas, and 1 year of Agyatvas. 14 mil gaya. For 14 years, the protagonists of both the epics, protagonist groups, were moving around all sorts of places with all sorts of names, and every part of India claimed that I am Chitrakoot, I am Manipur. There are 1,719 claimants for Manipur. So you understand, by spreading the names and spreading the identities and then claiming the names and claiming the identities. You've all gone on visits. How many times have we been shown which cave Hanuman was born in? Huh? Wherever you go, they say, Sita Maiya stayed here. The idea is not whether she was on a twin sharing basis or whatever. The idea was to identify the main character of an epic, a holy person, a holy character, with a place, and then bring the place from the outlier to the center. What a stratagem. So all these places that are mentioned there, I have seen at least 9 places where they say Jatayu fell. Finally asked them at the 7th place, did anyone see him falling? So Jatayu fell here in Andhra Pradesh, Lepakshi and all that, all sorts of places. The idea is not to ridicule. It's very easy to ridicule. The idea is to understand the mechanics of the mind, that you identify so many places. So you move on these places, and then you identify the lots of this process. You get a certain amount of net results of certain points being declared inarguably holy. The 4 Kumbhs, Haridwar, Prayag, Nashik, Ujjain. Have you noticed Ujjain, Nashik? So all of them come into the holy network All of them come into what we call the sacred network, and then you have Rameswaram, Mathura, Vrindavan, and all that. So this acceptance by a guy sitting in, as I said, Tripura, or somebody who stays in Bankura, who's not even seen the Ganga properly, would be identified, and he would feel himself to be a part of this whole narrative. That's all. Now you move on to timing. I said spatial, that's geographical, then you move on to the temporal, timing. Timing is an obsession with Indians. What do we call it? I mean, we're all late. Muhurat, Kal, Shubh Muhurat. It has to be done by 13th, by 7 a.m., 7:10, 7 hours, 10 minutes, otherwise Shubh Kal will go away. So this question of timing and determining the panchang, the calendar, the date, this thing, obsession, was an all-India phenomenon. Even before these guys were called Hindus or Buddhists or whatever, this remained one of the unifiers of India. And the very clever adjustment between the solar and the lunar. See, the lunar is very easy to understand. If you start from today and look at today's moon, we're just 2 days away from Purnima. So we are on the Krishna Paksh now, dawn. So you'll see it's around 90%, 80%, 70%. If you observe the moon for 2 months, you'll get a hang of it, what date it is. You'll get a hang of it. It's so easy because I have seen it. So everything is determined according to the moon. But bechare moon has only 28 days, na? Problem. Sun has 365 days. It's like those marriage reconciliations. Kahin na kahin to, I mean, you can't do away with it also. So you have to have, so you bring in solar year, lunar years, you bring in some festivals are according to Tithi, that is lunar calendar. Some are fixed according to the solar calendar. You manage to blunder along. That's all. This is what holds together. So the first one is on timing. The second one is about timing. I'll say it a little later. This is about timing of festivals and how they come up. But before that, we need to come to the deities, the gods and goddesses. This is a fascinating process. And the fascinating process is, to understand it, so the first is the process that began from roughly the Vedas till roughly the Guptas. That's around a period of almost 2,500 years. This was a period when every deity was accepted. There's no question of rejection. Ye pagan hai, ye heathen hai, ye Vidaishi hai. Talk Hindustani. Nothing is this thing. If a community, a group, an ethnic group, a tribal group, a community worships X, you accept it. He looks like a bhoot. That's your problem. Whatever. So everything under the sun, with whatever is accepted by any community of consequence, is brought in. Now, you declare it to be Deva Devi, isn't it? Every stone, little so sindoor chada rahi ho, bas. You don't even know what it is. Every stone, every piece of wood, every tree, have you noticed that all the trees come around, they are the center of all temples? From today, you start observing and you'll see all street shrines are around trees, at the foot of trees, at this. So this basic belief in mountains, in rivers, in trees and all that leads to a widespread acceptance of every form of worship. Every form, including the ones who crack skulls or chop heads. Ghastly now, but it happened. But dheere dheere sudharalo. Dheere dheere sudhar. That is the Indian process. Bring it in slowly. And over a period, all of them were deified. The deification held all the people together. Conflicting groups. Yaar, hamare ye wala kala hai, this one gore. You don't worry about kale, gore and all that. You worship, you keep your things together. First, this process, and then you find the process of the mega deities forming. Who are the mega deities? According to the Vedic period, the mega deities are Indra, Varun, Agni, vagara vagara. Hai na? You know that Rudra, that period. You've heard of it. You've never seen them. You've said. By the 11th century, by the 7th century, this had started changing. And gradually, 7th century is very interesting because it marks the real arrival of the Devi. Now, patriarchal religion always has problem with women. Always has this problem. So you keep them on the sidelines. You say, ha, Devi hai, but you don't care much. So when I say this, I talk of legitimacy. And legitimacy was in the form of 18 Mahapuranas. These 18 Mahapurana, Padma Puran, Skanda Puran, Vayu Puran, Agni Puran, Shiv Puran, you've heard of them. You may not have read them. I don't think anybody takes the trouble. And chalo. So these Purans give you the sacred literature, the normative structure. One after a lady. Mata Puran, ille. No. So the first Puran through which we get the legitimacy of female power is Markandeya Puran. Markandeya Puran has a whole section called Devi Mahatma. The Devi Mahatma brings in, and once this brings in, Ya Devi Sarvabhutish, once she comes in via one, let us say, surrogate method or whatever, indirect method, she's there. And the first impact of it is that immediately the triad of the Vedic period is replaced. The triad of the Vedic period, remember, first was Rudra, he is converted into Shiva. Second was Brahma, Brahma is sent out on pension to Pushkar, on a hill station to Pushkar. That's the only place. Indra is basically given chutti, but we don't have a temple of Indra. But you remember Indra. Hindustan mein kabhi bhulte nahi kisi ko. You remember Indra as the suffix of a name, like Dharmendra, Narendra. I am not political here. So, it's just a suffix of a name. But he's there, he's not there, he's there, he's not there. So we have this way of pensioning off the Vedic gods, and who replaces them? Brahma, I forgot, he's on pension. Vishnu, Shiva, and Devi. The appearance of Vishnu, Shiva, and Devi over a period of 300 years leads to a very fascinating process. It leads to a lot of mergers and acquisitions. There's lots of mergers and acquisitions. So over a period you find the first major merger and acquisition is Vishnu. Once you get Dash Avatar, in one stroke you have got 9 deities into one. The 10th is yet to come. Hai na? So you have 9 of them rolled into one. Then you have different rupas of Shiva. Devi, my God, completely foxed. Kali is Devi, Gauri is also Devi. Never mind the fair and lovely. So we keep it there. We find all the contradictions and everything. Don't take it seriously because we are now studying you're now looking at a subject that's your own. And we are talking within our own. So we get the appearance of the true Indic religion. And what is that? In one phrase, it is a management of contradictions. India's success has always lied not in homogenization or one niti, one this thing, one that. It lies in the management of contradictions. You have all managed contradictions, and more than that, you have managed the world. Because the other half, you inform, all of you inform on a need-to-know basis, है ना? बाकी तो the other half को आप सब कुछ बताते, कभी नहीं. On a need-to-know basis. At least that's what I get the feeling in my house. Yeah, tum to flying visitor ho, you will be told on a need-to-know basis. So on a need-to-know basis is on this basis of what I said, the arrival of 3 mega deities means that all the deities we talked about are now squeezed into them. They are acquired or they are absorbed into them. Example, very good. Look at the Bavan Peethsthans of Shakti, scattered all over, isn't it? So wherever there was a prominent sector, wherever there was a prominent place of worship of the Devi, she's brought in as this, as Maheshwari, as this, Shari, as Kankaleshwari, as this, that's it. Wherever is the Jyotirlingas, right from north to south, along with the second layer of the Shiva worship. Then you have the 108 plus Vishnu worships. These aggregations take place, and finally I will end up by saying that the real spirit of India lies in its festivals, the management of contradictions that I said. Any 1 or 2 examples, like say Navaratri. Navaratri is a very rigorous festival in North India that's centered. Look at what happens in East. Look at what happens in South. In South, they have never even heard of Navaratri being connected to either Ram or Durga. They have their own ways of dealing with Navaratri, but it's Navaratri. Whether you keep a fast or you gorge and meat and fish is your business, but you have to have your own this thing. Navaratri is also connected with fertility. Like in Maharashtra, they have this Ghat Sthapana. In Gujarat, they have Garba. What is Garba? Womb. It symbolizes the pot. It's a fertility festival, first and foremost. And Garba ke saath you have put Dandiya, that's all. So this is how we operate, one against the other. Look at Diwali. And look at Diwali, and you start with 5 of these dates for Diwali. Dhanteras, and you start, of course, Dhanteras is an infection that's spreading all over India now. Everybody wants to buy something on Dhanteras Day. It goes, but that is India. Nothing is stagnant. And then you say that Diwali, it's a festival of lights and Lakshmi. Look at these monks. They worship darkness and the dark. No, it's not as far as contradiction that you think it is. Because within this, you have this day that we have as Bhut Chaturdashi. Bhut Chaturdashi is there in all of them, more or less. What you call as Choti Diwali. It's how you call it. It's called Narak Chaturdashi, Najar Chaturdashi. It's called by different names. So that's the whole idea. One who celebrated Narak Chaturdashi, and Narak Chaturdashi is incidentally not celebration of Narak. It's a celebration of the victory of a woman called Satyabhama who defeated Narak Asur. Because Krishna got fagged out. That's all. That's the story. So we have all these things coming in between, woven into one. Look at Makar Sankranti. It's known by 40 different names. Bohagi Bhilu, Bihu, it's known as Vishu, it's known as by different things. The Gujaratis fly kites. The monks wouldn't dare to fly kites because you thanda lege jabe. So all sorts of things. So we have this thing, middle of January. They have monkey caps and all sorts of things. But then, since gourd wasn't grown in Bengal, you have Tile Nadu. You come up with your solutions, the innovativeness you got. But what is the essence of Makar Sankranti? All women would know, I take 2 moments. All women would know that you can't run a household without 5 things. The 4 essential things are salt, masala, oil, because you don't use animal fat in India, oil, sugar. And the 5th one is the maid, if possible. Okay. So these 4 are essential, and in India you had sugar, in India you had salt was plenty, spices were plenty. Problem is, sugar and oil came through crops. Do you know what is the origin of tela? Tel? It comes from a word called tila, til. And the oleoresin of til is called taila, Tailam, tela. So the original purest oil is gingerly oil or til oil. So everything that we call as oil is actually we are referring to still. Now til and sugarcane came up together in the month of November. And that is a reminder in our festival. What do we celebrate Makar Sankranti? Gajak, Revdi. What is Gajak, Revdi? Til and Gud. So you have to understand the festivals for their own values. It's easy to laugh away, it's easy to denigrate, it's easy to even give superior values. But the actual thing was these two crops came in, and if you had sugar, a bountiful sugar and a bountiful tail crop, you were assured of 2 and 2, 4. You were assured of the sugar supply, and you are assured of the oil supply. And the maize supply remains like this always, even from then, from those days. So you had, at every level, you'll find that this sort of a thing is the essence. So even if you look at 3 festivals, I've just named 3, I have lots of them. Navaratri, Diwali, you look at Makar Sankranti, you'll find the essence of it is management of contradictions and adornment of history. We don't understand why is it that in winter Gajak and Rodi are given. They are celebration. Yeah, now you can get cube sugar in any form anywhere. But they are celebration, the historic celebration, the historic memory of the story of how India got together. So I'll close at this level. I'll let you think and give me more and more inputs as you go along. If you observe something that I have missed out, please send it to me via whatever route. The story of India is one of complete coordination, amalgamation, and a voluntary union of maddening, impossible ethnic differences. 600 languages, God knows how many ethnic groups, something like 1,400 ethnic groups. They held together by a narrative, by a value system, and by certain enterprising communities that have brought them together through the journey of history in the management of contradictions. Thank you very much.
Management of contradictions. I think this is the key word that or term that you've given us today, Jawar. And I have actually, you've thrown up so many questions, but
I take the flight after 1 hour. Take it. That's what
it's okay. So I know I will have to
restrict
1 hour, to a few.
I can leave exactly after 45 minutes or something.
Okay, great. So
incidentally, has it flown over the heads?
I'm sure not.
Okay, if you want, I'll dilute it further. Look at it your way. Think of it your way. Whatever you've understood, whatever you have been provoked into thinking, that's it. It's let nobody dictate what you are going to think about. It's your way of looking at it. Finished. I've just given you a few pointers. That's a mukul.
So when you spoke about festivals and you spoke about tail, oil, it led me to the question of what role did food play in the unification of India? And also, at the same time, what are the imported food, I would say food items that have really left an impact on India?
You see, we are basically a chawal dal people. Rest of it is after that, or roti dal, whichever way you look at it, it depends. And the two are incidentally switchable also. Now, we have the second thing that we believe in is an individual hearth at home. There's no question of community kitchen except in the Northwest, Sanja Chula. The rest of the civilizations, they go and share the chula. You go to Afghanistan, you go everywhere, they'll share the chula. They'll share the bread that has been made out of a common kitchen. Yahan, everything is yours. And the foods, well, we use our fingers. If you are having roti dal, the dal will be thicker. If you are having chawal dal, the dal will be thinner. Am I right, Nandita? Okay. Now, because she's my annadata, then Along with that, we have certain essential things which are common and you can identify an Indian from anywhere in the world. Things, you look at the periphery and you'll see the commonalities. Pakoda, dahi, chutney, papad. All these are the question of the love for saag, vegetables. Vegetarianism is something that India taught the world. I mean, it's maddening. You can't explain in the West and other places what vegetarianism is. They bring a meat dish and he says, no, vegetarian. He looks blank, East European. So I say, fructo legume. Fructo legume. She takes the meat out and says, fructo legume. For God's sake, it's not our way. Is that once it's got mixed up, it's non-vegetarian.
It's done forever.
Huh?
Once it's mixed up,
this idea of purity, the idea of separateness, and dahi. Do you know the mystery behind dahi? Mystery behind dahi is that we are not completely a Western people. वो आर्यन बहुत कुछ बोलते, but basically it's in the genes. Most Indians were basically lactose intolerant. And once you are lactose intolerant, you can't have milk like the Chinese don't take milk. The Southeast Asians don't take milk. So we have much of their blood as well, that type of blood as well, genes. So dahi breaks down the lactose. So we have everything is here by trial and error and by evolution of thinking. The fact that dahi is central to our food, and when I said ours, I include Bangladesh, I include Pakistan also.
yes,
They
absolutely.
won't know what to eat when they go to Saudi Arabia. But anyway, so the question is, the Indian foods have their essence built on our genes, on our requirements.
And what about the imported foods like potato?
We have had
Chai.
most of the food that we have nowadays are post-colonial. Post-colonial in the sense that if you look at a dish, almost everything there. Potato, peas, cabbage, cauliflower, tomato, beans. Everything is imported. But then we also exported the mango, various forms of gourd. They went from here. So where food is concerned, it's now reached an international mix. And we have internalized the foods. We have internalized the food. That is, a potato is an essential dish. But
So it unifies.
Is, huh?
It's essential all over the country. So
It's
it
all over.
unifies.
Unifier, potato.
Yeah. Chai,
But,
tea. Tea is also not essentially Indian,
Tea
right?
is not an Indian food, but so is the cycle and the matches. If you go to Bihar and say the cycle is foreign, she said, go to hell. Cycle is very much Indian. The torch is very much Indian. The lantern is very much Indian. So matches is also very much Indian. We have internalized them,
yeah.
isn't it? The matches. If you say matches in Europe, they won't understand what he's talking about. First of all, there are no matches there left. Whatever you need in matches is here.
Yeah.
They use lighters.
Another food item that I'm reminded of now is the samosa. The samosa.
All these foods, this samosa is a West Asian food that comes in as samudza. And I've taken samudza in at least 3 to 4 countries of the Central Asia and West Asia, where in the triangle contains keema.
Oh, okay.
It has keema there. It's mutton or whatever other meat is boiled and cooked and put in there. And once it comes to India, since most people are very wary about their food, so out goes the keema, you put in potato. You put in the potato and the pea and it becomes samosa. Jalebi. When I was taken to a jalebi stall, I was wondering what sort of exotic food am I going. And I said, oh my God, they're just giant-sized jalebis. So jalebi, it comes in there.
Adapt.
Huh?
We
Adapt.
adapt. Yeah.
They have it this big size and unmanageable, dripping all over their clothes. We make it small. And we say, aur nahi khayenge, ye bahut tasty. So we have it for our size and our taste and our sankoch.
So you spoke about how we use the fingers to eat, and even influences from West Asia. So who actually lived in India first? Could you take us through the various influences of people from various areas? I mean, India was not India as we see now, right?
Well, the so-called proto-Indians, what we call the ancestral South Indians now, ancestral South Indians came in straight out of Africa via various routes. The ancestral North Indians, that's another group that Tony Joseph and others gave, are basically groups that moved on from Central Asia, from the Iranian side, and they constitute the hardcore Indian, the what you call the Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, and all that. That's hardcore ancestral North Indian. Over and above that, we have the Vedic groups, Aryan groups coming in. They would constitute approximately 13 to 15% of your genetic makeup. The genes of every Indian has around 13 to 15% of them, depending on which part you are coming from. And then over and over that, then you have what I will call different ethnic groups coming in. There are hundreds and hundreds of ethnic groups, but the beauty of it all is once they came in, nobody wanted to go back, number one. And India stands out in world history as the only country that never invaded another, ever in its history.
Yeah.
Never invaded another country in its history. And number two, one of the reasons of our population explosion is no one leaves here. Whoever came, they stayed back. जाओ ना कुछ ships लेकर भागो नहीं यहाँ से कोई नहीं भागते. So they are all stationed here. So you don't have massive migrations of Indians who left.
Right.
You have migration of Indian laborers who went to Maldives, who went to
Who were taken.
who were taken
Yeah.
to Fiji, to Jamaica, to other places, but that's modern history. Other than that, and of course, colonization of Southeast Asia. Certain parts were colonized by Tamil and other traders who settled there, but the numbers are too infinitesimally small. Later on, they went to Malaysia and other places, but these are, I'm talking of sprinklings. You don't have waves and waves leaving out, unless you take the gypsies, the Romas, to be one such wave.
So you also spoke about 565 kingdoms. Phew, that was when India got independent. But then, why did India become, have the map that it has now? Why wasn't Sri Lanka a part of India? It was earlier. Nepal was a part of India. Burma. How did this happen? You are talking about unification, but here I can see there's a lot of division.
Nepal has been on the fringe all along, and like Afghanistan, they were non-mainland wars. If you go through the series of acquisitions and wars that the British had, you'll read about the Indo-Burmese War, the Burma campaigns,
Yes.
Myanmar. You'll read about the Nepal campaigns. You'll read about the Afghanistan campaigns. But then you'll also read about the Punjab campaigns, what we call the Anglo-Sikh wars. I differentiate between what we call the mainland ones, those who were integrally a part of the mainland ones, those who could fall in the narrative that I just told you.
Okay.
Those who believed in the same set of values, the same set of gods, goddesses, festivals, Makar Sankrantis and all Sankrantis would get obsessed more to other. That is the one that constitutes what you call mainland India, where a substantial part, about 15%, took over to Islam, 15-17%, and about 14% of what's left behind also believes in Islam.
Yeah. So yeah, you spoke about the capability of our country to attract communities and from all over the world in quite a similar manner. Historically, I cannot not speak about Calcutta, right? So we have seen that Calcutta also has been a melting pot of sorts with the Danish and the Portuguese and the Armenians, Chinese, and of course the British were here for 200 years. So, and Calcutta at one point was also probably the second most important city in the
Yes.
world at that time. So I would like to understand geographically, how did that happen? Why Calcutta and no other city of, or maybe partly a little bit of Mumbai, yeah? You would probably look at that.
You see, then you have to go back to 16th century India, and in 16th century India, trade was restricted to certain pockets. One of the important points of trade was Surat. Surat was an important point of trade, and parallel to Surat was Satgaon. Satgaon is Hooghly. Satgaon is Hooghly. These were the 2 points of trade. And then you also had Chittagong. So there were these points of trade. Bengal became an emporium of trade under the Mughals. The Mughal obsession for revenue in cash generated a monetary economy as distinguished from non-monetary economies of many other parts of India. Everything was, they demanded rent in cash. So you needed cash to move around. And luckily for the Mughals, this was a time when Argentinian silver and South American silver was also coming in large quantities via the Spanish-Portuguese route. The what Sher Shah would call the rupaya, the rupa from silver. So silver was available to lubricate trade. Silver is a less messy commodity than carrying sacks of grain for trade. So this part of trade and entrepreneurship at that point of time helped both helped Bengal achieve a certain degree of prominence as a trading mart. You know what happened was, because you needed to pay off in cash, so there were aggregators who went to the communities and bought up everything and stored them. And very soon a system appeared in Bengal called Haat. And these Haats were named after days. Somer Haat, Mangla Haat. Have you heard of Mangla Haat?
Yes, of course. I think many of us must have
So
been
Mangla
there.
Haat, Budher Haat, Guru Haat, and all that. So we have Haats coming up one after the other. And the European traders would stop at each Haat on the appointed date and pick up goods. So there were aggregators who brought the goods almost to the emporium points, so to say, the trading points. This became something that worked in Bengal's favor, and it became too lucrative for the Europeans to think of paying only in silver. Bullets were cheaper. Bullets were cheaper.
Wow. So now this next question is for...
You know what happened, now? From traders, they became conquerors.
Yeah.
So that's why I said bullets became cheaper. I mean, why pay in silver if you can manage without paying?
So this is for the Calcutta Heritage Collective, huge group that's here today to listen to you.
Huh?
So
Okay.
that whole group, So
your party.
my gang. So this question I have to ask you. What are the most distinguishing elements in its architectural heritage? Calcutta's, West Bengal's, you can take it up to West Bengal, which gave the city or the state its unified look, even though there were like so many varied influences.
You see, first was it adopted neo-colonial architecture. Neoclassical architecture. By the 18th century, the British started imagining that they were the successors of the Greeks, the Romans, and all of their conquerors. And they started copying their forms of columns and the triangles on top, the pediment, as we call it. The only problem was, this is a tropical country. So which means that you have to have some barriers. So you'll find that one of the interesting things about neoclassical architecture in Bengal, and start observing it from today. Whenever you see these pillared houses, the ones that have pillars going up to 3 floors, 2.5 floors, you will find a barrier in between, a blind that comes down to almost half.
Yes.
That blind prevents the tropical sun from burning you up. That blind is slanted. That's a fixed blind. Okay. For the windows, we had glass in a way, but if you open the glass, you would also have blinds, but this was a movable one called the louver, the louvered ones. So these are contraptions that we brought in. This was called jhilimili in Bengali. The blinds, the fixed blinds, the louvered blinds and others. You had neoclassical, but you also had Hindustan Indian elements coming in. The second thing was that, I mean, you must, neoclassical architecture, when you look at it, if you've been to Pantheon and other places, you will actually get straight into a tall assembly building. But here, the building comes up almost to the pillars and blocking. In addition to that, you have what we call the Baroque styles coming in and intervening. That's a lot of floral architecture, like writers' buildings and others. Yeah. You have, but if you leave that form and you come to what I would call the Calcutta's main signature form, I would say come to South. Most people ignore South, say, ah, wahan heritage kya hai yaar, Marwadi hai. So that's not the way. South Calcutta has a lot of, look at Alipur, where you stay. And you will see the finest of Art Deco. What is Art Deco? The first signature of Art Deco would be a circular veranda.
Yes, yes.
A circular side. And they married the circular with the square and rectangle. So one side of the house would be rectangular, sharply rectangular, no ornamentation. Okay, you got a veranda that comes in, and the other side would be circular. This stuttering, as we call it, this shuttering came in, and from Elgin Road, from Alipur, this was taken down to Hindustan Park and both sides of CIT. CIT Road, incidentally, at that point of time is Rajbihari Avenue on both sides. So if you go along Hindustan Park, Purnadas Road, Southern Avenue, you will find the smaller buildings. These were made by smaller, less wealthy Bengali independent houses.
But they had similar elements.
They had the pillar, and they had one of the reasons was having that veranda was to take advantage of the southern breeze. Yes. You've heard of it, Bengali enjoying his southern bridge?
Yeah, we all do.
Southern
Scientific. It's not to laugh about.
In fact, I'll make for you a presentation on Art Deco.
Wonderful. So
Art
we'll
Deco.
do that.
Because this Art Deco is not the Art Deco of Marine Drive. The Art Deco of Marine Drive was a commercialized ventures that came up during the war. The Art Deco of Calcutta is post-war, when all over the world Art Deco had been out of fashion.
Right.
At that point of time, Bengal came in with Art Deco. Their Art Deco was huge and grandiose. Art Deco in Calcutta is small and residential. They're not institutional buildings. So you had your own way of the woman of the house coming and supervising and saying, yahan line khecho. So they had their own embellishments on the buildings.
Interesting. So now, I think we're nearing the end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you some questions that you need to answer in just maybe one sentence or two. Because there are so many, but these are going to be fun questions.
Okay.
Not necessarily always very serious. This first one is serious though. 2 unique features of the Indian civilization.
One is what I would say is the urge to preserve and not disown. Everything is preserved and kept in some form or the other within our landscape. We don't destroy, we don't cut out, abort.
We reuse.
So that is one. And the second one is to accommodate, which is an extension, accommodate. We accommodate, like idli, dosa, is integral part of all foods everywhere now. So it doesn't matter who started the food, as long as it's enjoyable.
Yeah.
The puri of North India.
2 sentences.
Okay.
So what we took for granted is no longer so.
Huh?
What we took for granted is no longer so.
I think someone has answered it for me.
We want the answer from you. She's given one, freedom of speech. You can give another one.
Then we can't.
That too.
That too, I think I'll go.
Okay, you're foxed with this.
I'll pass this on because
Okay.
I'm supposed to be political, though I
No.
dislike politics as anybody else.
So, restoration, restoration,
Yes.
or renovation?
I would say restoration.
Yeah. So,
I am in favor of restoration, even if it leaves behind a little unkempt look, because that would bring the way it looks, and renovation would be covering it all up,
absolutely.
dolling it all up,
Which we're doing all the time now.
which you are doing all the time. That's not you're erasing history.
True.
You're dolling up history.
True.
You're making.
India? India, I think you've answered quite a bit, but I just want another one sentence. India, before India.
India? Huh?
Before India. What was India before India? Just one sentence. You've given a long thing, you can go on talking about it, but in one sentence, one thing.
It was a sense of Indianness that got us, in a
Okay.
way. Indianness was always there. Otherwise, you really
What is
can't.
Indianness?
Indianness is a form of owning, in the sense that if you think of Shankaracharya, the way he went from there to let us say, Kamaksha. And also, if you look at anyone, they could be in far-flung places, but I feel they are part of it. That feeling of...
Okay. The last one, and don't kill me for this, because I know we had discussed that we'll have no politics, but I am just too tempted to get your answer. You don't have to give a political answer. In fact, that would be your challenge. Don't give a political answer. Monument Vapsi.
Monument?
Monument Vapsi.
Vapsi. If it comes back for the public good, let it come back. Let it come back.
Diplomatic.
No, if it comes back for the... But you don't go around finding shivlings everywhere. No, I'm worried about the Bhabha Atomic Research Center.
Yeah,
It looks like a
seriously.
shivling, no? So, I mean, Kal, you'll
It'll
say
become
that
a
this
temple
is...
soon.
Huh? Huh?
I think we are getting too tempted for that. So let's now open to the floor. So before that, before we open to the floor, there are two questions for the wonderful audience here. And whoever answers, please, Ladies Study Group Committee, please kind of keep track. Whoever answers first correctly is going to get a small gift by LSG. What is officially India's full name? Either in Hindi or in English, both are acceptable. Officially, India's full name. There's a hand going up there. No. 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 Yes. Got it. Republic of India. So Priya Nevar, who's both an LSG and a CHC member. So big clap for her. Okay, nobody looks at the map, huh? Sequence of the 5 tributary of the Indus River from west to east. We've all studied it in school. Let's see whether we know our India. No looking at the map. Oh, there's no map now. Great! I was worried about that. From west to east. So Priya, not you now. Let's give others a chance. Nondita di, bolun. Yes, you did it. You have to applaud for your wife. Nondita has just got it. So she gets the gift. Sarika, Nondita di. Yeah, say it on the mic. Nondita, say it on the mic. Forgotten?
Ravi B.S. Jila.
No. West to east. You just had said it. Okay. Both Nanditas are like ganging up.
Ravi B.S. Settlage.
Yes. Got it. Perfect. So now, questions from the floor. I'm sure everybody must be like full of so many.
I've earned my question for the afternoon.
Absolutely.
Jawar, thank you so much for those interesting points. You've given us a lot of food for thought. Very early into your presentation, you made a very interesting line which piqued my curiosity. You said, unity is a byproduct of conquest. Could you expand?
In most countries of the world, the unification has come through conquest. If you take even the history of Great Britain, the different layers that have come in. The Anglo-Saxons came in first, the Danish came in part, then the Normans came and occupied, then the Romans came and occupied. So each one left its stamp behind, and that accounts for what you have, the British character, so to say, if at all. Now, India, on the other hand, is not incidentally a byproduct of conquest. Though conquests have left behind stamps, the Indian ethos precedes and supersedes conquest, because at no point of time did we ever have more than 60 to 80% held together. All the empires I spoke about put together, 60, 70% of India, they were held together for just about 500 years. And our history is at least 5,500 years of recorded history. So 500 out of 5,500 means nothing. So most of the time we were on our own. Each one was separate. But then if they were separate, if there was no central power to hold you together, what held you together? The ethos, the festivals, the obsession with time, Muhurat, Panchang, rivers, mountains, common beliefs, common gods, and went on that way.
So the last question, I'm being shown the watch. One more. Sangeeta and Vibha have, sorry, one of.
Jawar, what is your view on the rise of atheism in young? Predictions, atheism. Predictions state that religion might fade out altogether.
It'll change form. You see, belief is something so strong that it'll change form. You're looking at it from the Western point of view. They had 700 to 900 years of bloody wars, of crusades and internal wars and inquisitions, blood, to achieve a state of where science matters more than religion. To reach that stage, they went through 700 to 800 years of blood. We have, God forbid, we have not gone through such stages. So to us, religion still is something that, you see, the code that I just spoke about is based on religion without becoming communal. The fact that somebody believes in a particular deity does not make him or her communal. It is only when he or she uses that deity to inflict wounds on someone else, then it becomes communal. Otherwise, my belief in my God is my thing, yeah. I mean, why should I hide it?
One more? Can we take from the floor? Yeah? Okay, so one more.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, Jawar, you talked about accommodation and basically celebrating differences. That was the major strength. Now, why is it that it wasn't
Embedded enough strongly in our ethos? And what is it? Because we see it crumbling all the time, all around us today. I mean, Nandita just said what atheism? I mean, that doesn't exist. It's not going to happen in India, unfortunately, for a long time. But why is it that that's crumbled so easily? And what is it that one needs to do to make it really strongly embedded in our culture, in our character and ethos? That tolerance of differences, that celebration of differences.
that idea is going through strain, is going through a lot of strain, a particular idea, and without contradiction, no idea can firm up. I personally believe that the fact that it is going through contradiction, if it is strong enough, it will come out. It will come out. The fact that otherwise, it becomes a pansy recital of something you are taught. We have not earned, this generation has not earned its freedom, has not earned the values. They were just given to them on gift-wrapped mode. So to get back your values, you have to earn it now. It's like the Boneville chocolate. You don't buy one, you earn one. Huh.
Okay. Absolute last one. I'm being really shown eyes now.
Who's that?
Yeah.
Oh, Veena.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask you, Jawar.
You are under the lights, no? You were always...
In the light.
I just wanted to ask you one thing. That, this casteism was by birth and not by, was now by birth. But when it was taken as from birth onward, the Brahmins did it or Kshatriyas did it, who did it?
Which one?
The casteism, the Brahmins. Brahmin's son can be a Shudra and all that.
Well, that's another separate topic because there was a lot of fluidity. There's a lot of fluidity. The way we look at it now, there's been migration within them, within various so-called jatis, not caste. Within jatis, there have been migrations, movements, absorptions, coalitions, mergers, acquisitions. It's not been the way we see it, but there is a curse about it in the sense that beyond a point, the wall was made.
I came to know that the Brahmins were to be blamed for that. Brahmins were to be blamed for that because it was not, the casteism was not by birth. It was by their karmas.
That's another of their theories. Another of their theories. Caste पर और एक दिन बात करेंगे. If you give.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Ladies Study Group, I would like to offer our grateful thanks to Mr. Jawar Sircar for being here today. Your talk on Holy Network, which we did not want it to end, was captivating and engaging, and the icing on the cake was a witty humor. I would like to thank P.P. Mukul Agarwal for being in a thought-provoking conversation with Mr. Sircar. Mukul, it sure was a very captivating and informative talk. Sumita Di, we appreciate the varied array of events through your term. You have been really unique in your endeavor. Thank you, esteemed guests and members, for joining us today. We thank the members of the press for their continued coverage, and we appreciate the support and wonderful hospitality of ITC Shonar. I would now request our founder president, Mrs. Roma Bhagat, to please join us on stage and present a token of appreciation to Mr. Sircar.
You're younger than me. Yeah, that's it.
Say 92, then I'll talk.
What's this? Wow. Thank you.